All right. Good afternoon, Commissioners. It's 3 o'clock. I'd like to call the meeting to order, and first item is roll call. Mike, could you please call the roll?
Yep, I'll start with Chair Brown.
Don Brown, attending remotely from Mount Clemens, Michigan, Macomb County.
Commissioner Kleinfeld.
I'm on twice.
You're on here twice, Veronica.
As she works that out, we'll go to Commissioner Romano.
Commissioner Romano, District 4, Sterling Heights, present and participating remotely in Macomb County, Michigan.
Commissioner Kraft.
Commissioner Phil Kraft, attending remotely from Chesterfield Township, Macomb County, Michigan.
Commissioner Haw.
Commissioner Haw, attending remotely, Roseville, Macomb County, Michigan.
Commissioner Wallace.
Commissioner Wallace, attending remotely from Mount Clemens, Macomb County, Michigan.
Commissioner Song.
Commissioner Song, attending remotely from Warren, Macomb County, Michigan.
Commissioner Van Sickle.
Commissioner Van Sickle, attending remotely, Sterling Heights, Macomb County, Michigan.
Commissioner Zinner.
Commissioner Zinner, attending remotely from Harrison Township, Michigan, Macomb County.
Commissioner Matuzik.
Commissioner Matuzik, attending remotely, Clinton Township, Macomb County, Michigan.
Commissioner Farrington.
Commissioner Farrington, attending remotely from Utica, Macomb County, Michigan.
Commissioner Sabatini.
Commissioner Sabatini, attending remotely from Macomb Township, Macomb County, Michigan.
Commissioner Nard.
Commissioner Nard, attending remotely from Warren, Macomb County, Michigan.
Okay, and Commissioner Kleinfeld, were you able to connect?
Yes, Commissioner Kleinfeld, attending from East Point, Macomb County, Michigan.
Thank you, and that completes the roll.
Thank you, Mike. Next item is Pledge of Allegiance. I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. Next item, I need a motion to adopt the agenda.
Romano adopts the agenda.
Support Nard.
Been moved and supported. Any additions, subtractions? Please vote.
That motion passes 13-0.
Very good. Item number 4 is approval of the minutes dated March 18th, 2021. Can I have a motion?
Matuzik moves.
I'll second.
Support Van Sickle.
Thank you, Commissioner Matuzik, and seconded by Commissioner Haw. Please vote.
That motion passes 13-0.
Thank you. Item 5 is public participation. This is the first opportunity for the public to participate for those who wish to speak for a maximum of 5 minutes on any item they wish to on today's agenda. There will be a second opportunity at the end of the meeting for people to speak on anything that they want on any issue, regardless of whether it's on the agenda or not. For those planning to speak during public participation, please be advised that according to Rule 21, adopted by the board rules, personal attacks, coarse and derogatory language, and cursing will not be tolerated. Individuals using such language will be removed from the meeting. Also, those who are on the phone for public participation will be asked to speak first in an orderly fashion. Those who join virtually will then be asked to type their name into the Google chat box, and their names will be called upon in the order in which they were received. So, staff, is there anyone on the phone that would like to be heard? If you're on the phone, please press *6 to unmute yourself, and you'll have 5 minutes to speak on any item on the agenda.
Chair, we don't have anybody in the chat box wishing to speak, and there doesn't appear to be anyone on the phone.
Okay, one more time. Anyone on the phone that wishes to be heard, press *6 on the phone, and you'll be released. Okay, very good. We'll close public participation. We'll come back to that at the end of the agenda. Oh, yes, Edward Jones, do you want to speak?
Yes, this is Edward Woods III, Chairman Brown. We emailed with regards to the Michigan Independent Citizens Redistricting Commission.
Oh, yes, please.
Is this the appropriate time for this presentation, or?
No, we'll have to put you on a future agenda. We didn't have you on the agenda today. So there must have been a communication error. Yeah, so we'll add you on the 29th of April. We've got another meeting. We can schedule at that time. So
Chair, could we consider amending the agenda even though we've already voted?
My presentation is less than 5 minutes, so that's why I thought I was coming to public comments.
Well, you know what I'll do is I'll allow you the latitude right now under public participation, if that's okay with the board. Hearing none, please go ahead, Mr. Woods. I'm glad you made the effort to come up. We're anxious to hear from you, so I'm glad you came. So thank you very much. Please go ahead.
Thank you. Are you able to see my screen?
Yes, we are.
Perfect. Once again, I'd like to thank Chairman Brown and the members of the Macomb County Commission for having me. My name is Edward Woods III. I serve as the Communications and Outreach Director for the Commission. What we're here to share with you is a little bit about Michigan's redistricting process. And so if you take a look at, for some reason, it's not allowing me to move.
We see the first slide easy enough,
but it won't allow. This is weird.
Well,
let me try this.
Right?
Yeah. Well, this is. Hold on. Let me stop sharing and try it again. Okay, maybe that might work. Okay, let's try it this way. Are you able to see it?
No, yes, we are.
Perfect. In 2018, Michigan voters passed Proposal 2. This was a ballot proposal for voters and not legislators to take responsibility for nonpartisan redistricting and created the Michigan Independent Citizens Redistricting Commission. It's comprised of 13 randomly selected Michigan residents that includes 4 Democrats, 5 independents, and 4 Republicans. The MICRC, which is the acronym, is responsible for redistricting the U.S. congressional, the Michigan House, and Michigan Senate districts. Okay, it seems like I can only do one slide through this program, so I'll just continue to present verbally at this time. Sorry about that.
No
and I
problem.
will email you the presentation.
Thank
to
you.
ensure fair and impartial maps, before the MICRC can draw any redistrict lines for the House, Michigan House, Senate, and of course the congressional districts, we have to host at least a minimum of 10 public hearings. The purpose of the public hearings are to inform the public about the redistricting process, share the purpose and responsibilities of the commission, and solicit information from the public about potential redistricting plans for the Michigan House, congressional, and Senate districts. We have a number of public hearings coming up, but the one that is going to be located in Macomb County will take place on June 24th. I repeat, June 24th at the MRCC Banquet Center. We're going to host the 2 public hearings. The first one will once again provide information about the redistricting process. And then the second one will be the maps that we are considering for all 3 maps, the Michigan House, the Michigan Senate, and the U.S. Congressional. Once again, that will take place either in November or December, and I can speak more to that a little bit later. The redistricting criteria is mandated by the U.S. Constitution, requires equal population, which refers to the amount of people in the district. For congressional districts right now, as of 2010, it was approximately 711,000 people. We have 14 districts now, but it's expected that we will probably go from 14 to 13. This will be the 5th cycle in a row that Michigan has lost 1 seat. For the Michigan Senate district, it's between 212,400 to 263,500. There are 38 members, as you already know. And for the Michigan House district, it is between 77 and 91,000 residents. There are and 10 members. So equal population, Voting Rights Act, Federal Act, state laws is the #1 redistricting criteria. The second one, it has to be geographically contiguous. The third one is communities of interest. The fourth one is no disproportionate advantage to any political party. The fifth one is no favor or disfavor to an incumbent elected official or a candidate. The sixth one is reflect consideration of county, city, and township boundaries. And then the seventh one is reasonably compact. When we talk about communities of interest may include, but should not be limited to, populations that share cultural or historical characteristics or economic interests. Communities of interest do not include relationships with political parties, incumbents, or political candidates. Community of interest could include arts districts, neighborhoods, business, agriculture, education, waterfront communities, and so much more. Although race is important, it is not the only characteristic when considering communities of interest. We welcome your ideas as well as the ideas of residents from Macomb County to increase awareness and engagement in Michigan's redistricting process. You can email them to us at redistricting@michigan.gov. You can mail them to us at MICRC, P.O. Box 30318, Lansing, Michigan. You can share them at our weekly meetings on Thursdays during public comments, or come and speak during one of our upcoming public hearings. And to learn more about the MICRC, we welcome people to visit the website, which is www.michigan.gov/MICRC. As shared earlier, I'll provide a copy of this presentation, but Mr. Chair, I wanted to make sure I stayed within my time limit because just in case I might be able to come back, I don't want to abuse my privilege.
Absolutely. Mr. Woods and I have communicated online and have asked him to attend the meeting so that we could hear the interesting work that they're doing. And obviously also as being politicians in elected office, we're all interested in this topic. Though your business doesn't affect us here locally in the county, as our own commission districts are done locally. What we'll do is we'll have you on, Mr. Woods, for a future meeting so that we can have all the information provided to our commissioners that you provided. It's really good stuff, and we'll have you back as soon as maybe even our next full board. We'll find a meeting to get you on as soon as possible. But
not a problem. I'll send you a copy of this presentation.
That'd be great. We appreciate that. And look forward to hearing from you again in the future. Thank you, Mr. Woods, and we'll talk to you again soon. Thank you so much. Take care. All right. We'll close public participation. Item 6 is correspondence from the executive. There is none. Item 7 is presentations of Gcsi Governmental Consulting Services Incorporated. Gary Owen. Gary, are you on?
I am. Can you see me, Mr. Chairman?
Chair, I'll make a motion.
Okay, a motion made and receive. And we need someone else to support the motion to receive and file.
Support. Motion to receive, Nard.
Thank you. Okay, very good, Gary. I see you. The floor is yours.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman, and some of the familiar faces. Nice to see you again. It's also a good opportunity for me to introduce myself with so many new commissioners. My name's Gary Owen. I'm at Governmental Consultant Services here in Lansing, Gcsi, as it's known up here. We are the contract lobbyist for the county and have worked on behalf of the county since, I believe, around 1989, 1990, and have worked very closely with the commission until the executive format of government took Macomb County and continue to periodically appear as asked with the chair and with the commission, and are always available as commissioners would need anything up here in Lansing. I thought today would be a good opportunity to first of all just introduce myself, introduce the firm, talk a little bit about some of the landscape in Lansing and some of the things going on up here, and answer any questions, and then come back relatively soon and have a more in-depth conversation if there are specific questions or topics or things that commissioners would like to see. It's been obviously a very interesting time in governance, certainly very unique following last year's COVID activity up here and really, following the election and presidential activity. It's a different time in Lansing. It is split government in every sense of the term. There are not a lot of in-depth policy conversations happening between the legislature and the executive office. Most of the activity is budgetary focused. Most of the activity is focused on how to get federal resources out the door and how to allocate those resources correctly, how to continue to deal with the pandemic, and then also how to look at some of the other budgetary needs and ways to work together in those areas. The budget is constitutionally demanded by October 1 of each year. And with the recent influx of CARES dollars that you are all aware of to the county and local units of government, there's a lot of money that needs to be appropriated correctly. And those conversations that are dictated and mandated by the Constitution continue to move forward. I would say that, when Representative Hall or Representative Farrington were in town, it was a little bit of a different policy scenario. There were more conversations about different tax structures and just a million different policy arenas that they were interacting in every day. There was one party control. There was just a different environment than there is today, for better or worse. And because of that, I would say that the vast majority of activity that we're doing on behalf of the county is budgetary. So we, as of today, there's going to be essentially 2 to 3 different budgetary vehicles that will move between October 1st. First is a Corona vehicle, coronavirus kind of budgetary vehicle that will continue to spend dollars that come in from the federal government. The legislature is doing that monthly, quarterly kind of rollout of those dollars. And those conversations are ongoing. The first supplemental budget bill we will see will focus on that activity. And we will quickly move kind of right after to a more of a project-based supplemental. One project that we've been working on really hard on behalf of the county is a project at Mclaren Hospital that would allow for better access for emergency vehicles in and out of that Mclaren campus. It is a county project in the sense that it has to be a public road. So it will be between $3.5 and $5 million for the county to redo that access point and do it safely. Ingress, egress for ambulance and other type vehicles that are coming in there. So far, that looks relatively promising. It will be into the Senate supplemental that will come out, if I had to guess, this month, but it's been pushed back several times to date. So we will continue to follow that, but that's being referred to here as kind of the projects supplemental. And we're going to be pretty aggressive, especially as that continues on, to see more and more what we're able to get in there. The longer that is delayed, naturally, the more it will grow. And the more it grows, the more we will be there attempting to see what we're able to get in. I know that the chair is working with several of you on identifying priority projects for the commission. And we are doing the same with county departments and making sure that we're fully aware of the needs of local government right now, from infrastructure to all of the different pressures that local government's under right now. So that supplemental will move, if I had to guess, sometime between now and June. At a certain point, that was going to move in February. Then it became March, and now we hear May, and so it continues to get pushed out a little bit. But we're watching it very closely. We do have a pretty sizable project in there that we're very happy about on the infrastructure side, and we're going to continue to try to get more into that supplemental piece. In a parallel fashion, we have started the full budget cycle. So State Department's working with subcommittee chairs in the appropriations committees to develop budgets and work those through for the FY 21-22 budget, which will start October 1. That process is underway. We do have a new House Appropriations Chair who's working with several new subcommittee chairs, and they are working through that process with a new budget director, Dave Masseron, and most of the Senate folks in that committee are the same, but a couple new faces and several freshmen on the House side that will always delay the rollout of any budget. So they're working through that process now. I could, we do anticipate more and more federal dollars being part of that budget as well. And we also anticipate a lot of the focus, and we're certainly going to be trying to push it that way, to shift from the pandemic as those, it's hard to talk about now with the recent numbers, but as state government is able to look past the pandemic and start focusing on a lot of the other areas of economic development and infrastructure needs, et cetera, we will certainly be up here trying to make sure that we're getting the fair share for Macomb County, which has always been a donor county in every sense of the word. And getting a list of priorities is something that we are continuing to work on to make sure we're in place for that. As if there is a federal infrastructure package, for example, what do those priorities look like for the individual local governments in Macomb, and then for the county itself. Mr. Chairman, I wanted to do a general update. I know that there's a lot of new commissioners. I'm happy to answer any questions generally. I'm happy to talk specifically about any area, but I defer to you.
Thank you, Gary. As you know, we all have individual representatives and senators we all talk to and have various relationships with, and they are first and foremost our first line of lobbyists, the Lansing. They work together on our behalf to advocate. You are an important person. Your firm's an important person to help unify some of those interests, to focus them on one spot. And we're glad you're here and explain the background to the commissioners and to they'll know that you're there as a resource. I've asked the commissioners to submit some individual projects from their district that we could give to you, that you could advocate for, and give you a list of things from the project from an individual commissioner standpoint. So with that, we have a series of commissioners that have some questions. The first is Commissioner Kraft.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. Gary's not smiling yet. He probably won't be in a little bit either. But Gary, it's good to see you. I think last time you came before us was pre-COVID times, better days for sure. Just wondering, I know the last calendar year was extremely tough for a lot of us. It was very interesting being in Lansing or not, being virtual. But for me personally, I know it was one of my busiest, one of the toughest years that I've been through. What did you, Gary, and Gcsi do on behalf of Macomb County in terms of lobbying the last calendar year?
Sure. So, it's almost tough to think about the last calendar year. It almost feels like the last real calendar year was 2019 with just, it almost feels like a lost year in a lot of ways. Remembering when the pandemic started to roll, it was very labor intensive early on, just regular communications and ensuring, part of the transition as the pandemic started, making sure that, just the lines of communication were open at kind of the highest levels between department directors facing challenges that they never had, really operating through the executive office to ensure that, the governor's team and the executive office with the county executive, we're talking regularly. And if you think about the different waves of needs, right, you started with PPE needs, you immediately got into hospital shortages and overflows and what those looked like, and then moved into, financial resources. It was a very interesting year on the lobbying side because it was just very difficult to influence the process with the speed by which it moved and the magnitude of the pandemic and impact it had on kind of state and local government. It rose very, very much above the normal case or normal ability of our pay grade, if you will, right? These were conversations between the governor and health and safety experts, between the county executive and department directors, direct with state department directors, trying to make sure those lines of communication stayed open. But I wouldn't say that, there was a lot of, advocacy in the sense of trying to, a lot of the decisions were made. It was more doing what you could to organize it. So that was kind of, throughout 2020, it was almost a complete remote year. Legislatively, it was a completely lost year. There was no major, I think you would agree with that, being up here the way that you are. There was no major policy negotiations that I think made it to fruition through that lame duck process of note. Especially if you compare it to 2019, where you had, no fault insurance and some other, major pieces of policy. 2020 was about playing defense and reacting and trying to just make sure that the right people were connected if possible. And 2021 starts to kind of, I guess, come out of the thaw in that sense. So, it just a lot of communications and ensuring that the right people were talking to the right people and just trying to get out of the way in a lot of ways.
Yeah, Gary, I know it was extremely tough. I mean, I lived in the unemployment world for a whole year, which was miserable. So
Yep.
I didn't know what your side looked like because obviously it was, everybody was doing different things than they would normally do. Real quick for the new commissioners. So I know Chair Brown has talked about, these projects and is asking us for projects and things like that. Can you briefly walk us through the process of when we hand these ideas to you? Then what's the next step? Who do you lobby to? Who do you reach out to? Is it specific chairs of committees? Is it the appropriations chair specifically? Maybe touch on that real quick for some of the new commissioners.
Yeah, sure. So a lot of it is very much project based. And what do I mean by that? There could be a project that may be a trail connector in one of your districts or communities that we may see, and you say, we need help getting this trail connector done. We're looking at trying to, get a grant or some money. The city or local might not, have a lot of experience in getting a lot of these grants. Can you help? And it may be that you approach the Natural Resource Trust Fund program at DNR. It may be that you approach TAP funding at MDOT or so many different, the SEMCOG has funding and the feds have programs, and a lot of what we will organize and help for is kind of the organizational side, figuring out what fits into these programs, leveraging them against each other. So getting creative and figuring out how to take MDOT money if the community might not have match dollars right then, using other state programs to match towards other grants. But if we don't know the projects and don't know some of the priorities from an infrastructure standpoint, can be recreational infrastructure, can be, just transportation infrastructure. Learning what those projects are really helpful. We'll always work with the delegation based on, the state reps and senators from that area to keep them looped in. I think that one of the major areas that we'll be active on as we move forward here is gap funding and finishing the Mountain Road project. The feds allocated $150 million in the Tiger grant. I believe that was the number. There may be some on the call that have exact numbers that are more accurate. County locals also stepped up with another $35 million, and there's about $35 million of missing, funding. We have started a process with the commission, or with the delegation that has, a piece of Mountain Road that touches Mountain Road, organizing a meeting in the executive's office or here in GCSI in the next couple of weeks, actually, to go to the administration, to go to the feds and the governor and others to request, creative ways to fill in that funding. It's $35 million ask. It does not fit into an MDOT bucket. It's too big, and it's not an MDOT road. And so, that, like, we still believe that, we'd like to get the state to step up, fill in that gap. I think the locals have done a really nice job in their willingness to step up and fill in. And $35 million is a huge ask for a legislative appropriation, as you know, Commissioner Kraft. But it's not. It doesn't mean we're not going to ask. There's plenty of communities that have gotten creative appropriations previously, and we fully intend to kind of go full court press and utilize relationships in DC and at the state to try to find that money over the next year or two. So, like I said, it really depends on the project and the process, but we try not to look at anything and not go after it.
Thanks, Gary. Just a reminder, the number 2 person in the House of Representatives is from Macomb, so you've got a strong advocate there. We all have a strong advocate there. So thank you, Gary, for being here today. Thank you, Mr. Chair.
Thank you, Commissioner Kraft. Commissioner Ha.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. Gary, nice seeing you again. Haven't seen you in a long time. 2 quick questions. Where do you see road funding going this year? Is there any speculation on what it's going to look like? And second question is, I know this may be a ridiculous question. At one point, we had a bipartisan Macomb County group consisting of representatives and senators. And as Don said, they're our first line into the process. Do you see any chance of a bipartisan Macomb County group forming again?
Yeah, I mean, so on the road funding piece, the governor did, I want to say $3.5 billion. I don't know the exact number in bonding that she did, and there will be one of the largest years for road construction this year. I definitely do not see some sort of grand bargain where she's going to get a tax increase. I don't think the appetite for that is in the legislature. Certainly not the tax increase that was proposed previously. I think, I still believe it's been a very interesting couple of years to your question following that, Commissioner Ha, in the sense that, I think that the delegation still very much remains bipartisan, works pretty closely together. And you should all know that you guys have a really strong delegation, in the House and Senate. As Commissioner Kraft mentioned, Speaker Pro Tem is from Macomb. Several very experienced folks in the House, a bipartisan delegation in the Senate with Senator McDonald and Senator Voino, who are great. But it's been a very weird 18 to 24 months, the camaraderie, the normal social gatherings, the normal kind of team efforts that Macomb legislators and delegations are often known for have not occurred because those types of gatherings and activities just haven't been commonplace. But it feels like some of that stuff is coming out of it. It feels like this summer there'll be a little bit more social activity, and certainly for us, I mean, you know this from your time serving. A lot of what we do is in-person activity and working together to try to figure out solutions to stuff. So we're hoping to do a little bit more of that and a little bit less, Zoom type activity.
Well, I hope you get to that because that accomplished more than a lot of the Zoom meetings or even the floor meetings. And I guess what I'm hearing you say is you probably miss Jeff and I. So that's good to hear. Thanks, Chair.
Yeah.
Thank you, Commissioner Hawk. Commissioner Matuzik.
Hi, Gary. Nice to see you. Used to do some work with your dad. I am a process person. And I get that the last year has been odd, weird, difficult, any adjective you choose. You've mentioned one specific project, the Mclaren Access, and then some generic budget concerns. I'm interested in how you decide which things are important to go after in Macomb, who you're consulting with to figure out which are important. The chair has asked us to put together a list of 13 projects we all want. How does those get prioritized? I'm a little concerned that I forget which of my colleagues said they hadn't seen you in a year. You're our lobbyist. I want to figure out how decisions get made. Your decisions get made, not the legislature. I understand that process. And it's difficult, but I need to figure out how priorities are set. When a piece of legislation is introduced, who do you call to say, does the county have a position on this? How is this working?
Sure. So for the most part, those activities will always go through the county executive's office and through the chair. We'll always come before the board if requested by the chair. And those requests, we had a really good conversations with Chairman Brown about, a few weeks ago and had a very similar tone and conversation to what you just laid out, right? That there needs to be some more communication, that there needs to be, a process in which everybody knows, a few things that are always being worked on, et cetera, whether or not that's directly. But for the most part, communications will go through the chair and through the county executive's office. It is an abnormal year for certain. Like I said, I wish that there were a lot of individual projects and specific items that were being shepherded through. I mean, 95% of government activity, maybe 99% of government activity over the last 12 months has been focused on, herding the cats of coronavirus and the chaos that came with the pandemic, right? As you get back to regular order, we will come before the board quarterly with specific bills and priorities that are moving forward. Sometimes ask the commission to pass a resolution in support of or take that resolution, making sure that we're always coordinating with the delegation up here. A lot of the activity will be through county departments. So, on different projects, we're finally getting back to a point where we're talking about projects again, which is why I brought up the Mclaren Hospital infrastructure project. Right? For example, that's a priority that was one of the counties and Mclaren Hospital, where they approached the legislature, and we've been involved kind of each step of the way, making sure that the coordination between MDOT and the engineers at the county are communicating properly and in a timely manner so that we don't lose out on that money. It could be up to $5 million in general fund, which is a lot for a, you know, ingress egress piece, which will go a long way towards safety at the hospital. But just, you know, 4 or 5 recent phone calls as well on just making sure everybody's moving forward in the right direction. And this has been the first opportunity to come and present on that specific project. But I assume that they're going to get back to regular processes, right? Looking at policy concerns. We know, you know, in my conversation with the chair, knowing that there's a possible federal infrastructure package is coming down, is something that we're trying to anticipate and get, you know, organized so that we can get the maximum amount of projects submitted. What does that look like? It could be submitted to the state legislative delegation, but also to the federal delegation, and getting organized before, you know, those questions asked. We've all heard the project ready, you know, shovel ready term, right? Finding out how many shovel ready projects are in these individual districts helps us a lot. Put those in front of the right people. So the chair's asked us to show up a little bit more regularly this year and next, and make sure that we're communicating on several of the things we're working on.
Thank you, Chair.
Thank you, Commissioner Matuszak. Commissioner Kleinfeld.
Thank you, Chair. The last time you were here, we talked about one of the issues that's one of the hottest issues for county commissioners, and that is 4-year terms. It's one of the Michigan Association of Counties' biggest pushes right now. So I wanted to ask you 2 things. Since we last talked, who have you talked to about 4-year terms, and where do you see it stands right now? And that's another question, but go ahead.
Yeah, to be fair, that, you know, that definitely fell off the radar after that last 2019 conversation. But I will get a status update and get you something on kind of where that bill is and the impact it would have as far as, you know, whether or not it's good. I'd really like to know. And one of the major things that's obviously changed is, you know, whether or not that's going to have viability with the administration and with the new leadership in the House. So I'd have to do a little bit digging and get back to you.
My understanding is the debate lies in whether it's presidential or non-presidential years. But the reason I brought that particular one up the last time you were here is because it was county commissioner related. And I know our setup is you basically, you work for the county executive, but you also work for us. And this was one where there was no conflict between the two. So I'm a little surprised that you weren't able to follow that. Since you have multi-clients, it seems to me it would be difficult to take 13 projects from Macomb County and go to the leadership in the different committees and advocate for 13 projects for one of your clients and still be effective with the other ones. So I don't know that it sounds wonderful, but I'm not so sure that it's really realistic. My next question is, could you give us the specifics about probably the more controversial things? What is in the election bills that they're looking at right now? And from either perspective, good or bad, what are the biggest changes and the things that may or may not cause concern for individuals?
So quickly on the 4-year term bill, when we were working through a lot of these things in 2019, remember that was the first year of a 2-year session. All of those bills died at the end of 2020 and are being revamped. You've got a new House with a lot of freshman reps that are going through like the regular policy type briefings from departments, having department directors come in, educate committees on different formats, programs, etc. And now we'll start getting into substantive activity. I think the House has been pretty open about the fact that they wanted a change in tone. They've moved several bills out of the House without a ton of feedback and interaction from the administration, making it clear on accountability over COVID dollars, a few very specific things that if you look at quotes from the Speaker and from leadership in the House, they wanted to focus on that early on.
If I could, I'm sorry. I was asking about the bills that would affect elections, and so I was hoping to get an update on that.
Which specific election bills?
My understanding is there are several election bills that are floating around in Lansing, like there are in other states, but I don't know anything about them and what their content was. So I was hoping that you could tell me that. And the reason I'm kind of steering back to that particular question is I don't want to make other commissioners wait. That's really my last question. And if you have any information on those, that would be great.
I think, yeah. And just to be, more in depth on those, I'll get a written report on the election bills to the chair.
Thank you.
Thank you, Chair.
Thank you, Commissioner Kleinfeld. Commissioner Song.
Thank you, Chair. And forgive me if I ask a question that maybe you guys already know, but I am new here. Just wondering, Chair or Gary, how much is the county paying to Gcsi, and why does the county share a lobbyist?
We share a lobbyist with the county executive office because we're one county, one voice. That's why we do it internally. So there are many effective lobbying firms have multiple clients. They don't have one client lobbyist because they probably couldn't survive very well and have the resources necessary to operate. Was my thinking behind it. So it's very common to have firms have multiple client lobbyists. And now, back when I first joined the board, we had one lobbyist. We had one lobbyist solely for us. I forgot the guy's name. It was so small, but it turned out it just wasn't effective, and the board made the change. This is back in my first term, and I didn't know. I was like you, Commissioner Song. I didn't understand what lobbyists did and what even the county did, and they were talking about changing lobbyists, this and that. But the one thing that came clear was this guy was a one-shop operation, and he didn't have very much reach. And having a large firm, having more tentacles involved with the government, more people that were involved in government that understand the process helps the organization. So the dollar amount on what we're paying as a whole for the county, I don't have off the top of my head. We'll probably get that. I'll ask staff to do it while we're discussing this, and if we have it before we're done, I'll get the number for us. Gary, you have anything to add about the advantages of a multi-client firm as opposed to a single client firm?
No, I think you articulated it well. We do represent probably as many or more clients as anybody in town.
I find that as a conflict of interest, and with all due respect, Chair, I understand that you can be wishful and say we're one county and one voice, but we are 13 commissioners, and we clearly don't share the same values or beliefs. So I think it's misleading to say that we are one voice. I think that sharing a lobbyist, which I understand what a lobbyist is someone that advocates on our behalf on legislation. I think that there is a conflict of interest to have one lobbyist, and I'm disappointed to learn that we share a lobbyist. And this is no offense to you at all, Gary, because I don't know who you are, but I think as a board, we need to review our policies and procedures and practices in hiring consulting firms. Because coming on to this board as a new commissioner, you guys are just kind of throwing this in our lap and expecting us to utilize this consulting firm as our lobbyist, and we haven't really fully discussed this process. So I'm pretty disappointed, and that answer, unfortunately, is not one that I'm willing to accept, because we can work as a team, and we are one county, But at the end of the day, we all have different beliefs and values and ways of doing things. And that is what makes us so great, is that we each bring our own expertise and our own voice to the county.
Thank you, Commissioner Song. I appreciate that. I understand your frustration being a new commissioner, new to elected form of government. And there's a lot of us have been on the board, have various levels of experience. And the goal of having us reach out and me reach out to all of you to ask for a project is because locally our county lobbyists can advocate and help your local community be a value add through you as a commissioner to bring resources that they don't have the expertise in, such as lobbying the department heads at MDOT. City of Warren's looking to try to expand their trail network down there. Wouldn't it be good if we partnered with the county's lobbyists to hook up the right, hook up a grant application that's partnered with the City of Warren and the county and the state to bring resources to the City of Warren to expand their trail network? I think that's a good thing, and the county executive supports these things. It isn't a zero-sum game that because he's doing something for the count for one of us in the county that it means that the county executive's priorities and his priorities are not as important. It's not a zero-sum game. We can do both things at the same time. We can bring resources to your district. This is for the first time in my tenure that we're actually going to submit a list from the Board of Commissioners to our county lobbyists. A lot of it's just been out there and hasn't really had, as far as I know, most commissioners never had an active role with their county lobbyists. No one's advocated for state programs through the lobbyist. They may have went through their state representative at times to do certain projects, but they haven't utilized to the full potential of having a county lobbyist, using our state reps and senators, and our own individual lobbying abilities by picking up the phone and going to Lansing to advocate for projects that could improve the quality of life in our communities, such as I've done in my district and many other commissioners have. So I want to bring those things to us. And that's why I want to reach out and get that list of projects to you and submit them to them. And I suspect there'll probably be a lot of road projects on there. And a lot of that stuff's covered by the county road department, but maybe some of them aren't. Maybe some of it's an industrial park in a community that you're trying to get developed. Your city wants the road fixed in an industrial park. So there may be ways to do that, but there's a lot of avenues that get resources to your community that you may not even be aware of. In fact, I'm not aware of all of them either, but there are many ways to get to what we want to do. And if they don't know about it, they can't advocate for them. And our job as commissioners and as part of the county as a whole is to advocate for our county, use every resource we have available, those that we're aware of and those that we're not. And I suspect many of you aren't aware of them. So I want to bring their resources to value to bring them out to us, like the SEMCOG grants I sent out to you. Most of you never even knew SEMCOG even provided money to your communities. We sent that out there to you so you would be aware of it, and you could promote it to your community, saying that SEMCOG, which sometimes is a disparaging organization because they don't always listen, brought money to your communities because of representatives that we have on SEMCOG, and we can increase that as representation and advocate for us. So there's many lines that go into improving our community and bringing the resources we need to Macomb County. Not just one person, not one lobbyist. We can't just say we'll rely on the lobbyists to get our things done, because if we did that, we won't get anything. And as a commissioner, again, that's sat on this board a long time, we've never had a direct relationship the way we're going to have with our current lobbyists the next 2 years. They're submitting projects to us, and then we'll have something to achieve. We gave you all these projects. What did we do? How do we do on some of these projects? And they don't have to then all have $35 million projects. They could be just connecting your local elected official with a department head in Lansing that could help them. It could be a legislation that your community needs to help address an economic development issue. There could be a myriad of things. It doesn't have to be a large dollar value project. It could be something as simple as hooking them up with the right people. Community mental health last year, we had big problems with the budget. They were allowing us on our behalf to try to get that budget problem solved. That's to say nothing to the federal level, but we're not there yet. But so there's a lot of value in asking for these projects. And I'm sorry if some of you don't understand the process, but that's your learning curve, and you'll come along, and that's fun. We want to help you. We want to raise everybody's boats, as I've always told you. And this is a step in that direction. So I want you to be all part of it, and that's why I'm reaching out. Is it idealistic that we're going to have 13 projects and everyone's going to get it? Probably not. But there might be a way to help your elected official, and they'll appreciate the fact you care enough about them to try to do something about it. So, I want to work with all of us to try to do the best we can, and we'll start it out. So, that's my story, and I'm sticking to it. Who's next on here?
We have
Commissioner
Commissioner
Zinner.
Zinner on the list.
Yes, thank you, Commissioner.
I think before I ask my question, I would say, I think the one mission that the chair talks about that we probably all have in common is that we're here for our citizens, no matter what commission district we're in. Gary, the question I have for you is, if there's something that I would want to submit, for instance, and if they're already asking for federal money, or if they're already asking for state money, grants, probably grants, is it something that I should still consider offering to you? Because they don't know if they're going to get federal or state funds, but is there something else that you could pull out of your magic
Yeah, I
bag?
mean, so just to clarify about the process and understanding what we are trying to accomplish by knowing some of these infrastructure priorities, it's not going to be that, you know, the House Appropriations Chair of Transportation or in the Senate, to Commissioner Kleinfeld's point, is just going to take 22 projects from Macomb or whatever the number is and put them in the budget because we walked them into their office and that's the end of the deal. That's not the goal of the process. The goal of the process is to understand priorities of the local units within Macomb through the individual commissioners to be able to figure out just what some of those look like and if we are able to help. Some of these may be infrastructure projects, some of them may be some other sort of priority. But to really answer your question, Commissioner, we can't help if we don't know what it is. And it may be as simple as putting a planning commission person in touch with the right person at MDOT, or they may be getting the wrong answer at one of these state departments that we don't agree with and that your state rep and senator might not agree with. And quite frankly, that the governor's office or that some of the senior officials at one of those departments might not agree with, that the bureaucratic response that's coming from, you know, the bowels of MDOT may not be the answer that the executive office might want to see coming from MDOT, which is an attempt to always try to get the yes and get some of these dollars out the door. The other reason for the process was knowing that there may be a very substantial infrastructure project or process coming down from the feds, and knowing some of these priorities can expedite and get the county organized to get to the front of the line. And so that was the goal of the process, and to try and get organized and understand where some of these local units are focused. As this stuff comes in, it may be that, you know, those things need to get submitted through the congressional offices, but it also may be that there's a state program that one of your locals isn't aware of that we can help navigate, because it is what we do for a living. We, you know, to the chair's point, we represent 17 local units of government, the most by far of any multi-client firm. Some see that as a strength. Some don't like that, right? We represent almost every single local unit in Washtenaw County. We do represent Macomb County, Wayne County, you know, Inkster, City of Detroit, Southfield, just a lot of different local units. And oftentimes the power of those numbers is actually a positive, because we navigate these programs more than anyone else, outside of maybe MAC and the MML. And even, you know, by the way, they have multi-client lobbyists as well. You know, we navigate these programs, and I personally navigate them as much as anybody in the state, from the trust fund program to DEQ programs to programs in MDOT, at MEDC, at MISTA, and you know, that's all we do up here is full time. We're not lawyers or you know, some other sort. We are full-time lobbyists, and our team are local government experts in a lot of ways. So we, you know, knowing, you know, and having you guys go through that exercise helps us, you know, understand what the local units within the county are focused on, so that we can try to help, you know, the county itself navigate some of that stuff. So, you know, hopefully that helps to clarify, you know, a little bit of the work that we do on behalf of local units.
Commissioner, are you done?
Yes, thank you. I see Van Sickle's up next.
Yes. Commissioner Van Sickle, go ahead.
Thank you, Chair. This question is probably split between Chair and Mr. Owens. Does the consulting firm work for both the BOC chair and the county executive, or does it work for the BOC chair and the county executive jointly? Meaning, do each of those individuals give you assignments, if you will, or whatever, priorities, or is it the joint brains of our chair and the county executive that speak as one?
Well, the board writes the check. It's in our budget. $60,000 a year is paid to GCSI. Now, professional services, the executive actually hires the firm. But I've been in contact with the executive's office on the subject of working jointly with the lobbyist to put forward our shared goals of improving the entire county. So I'd say it's a collective effort. We'll submit projects, and we're going to see how this goes. This is the first time in my knowledge that the board chair has been actively involved with the executive, trying to work together on pushing projects together for our communities, our individual commission districts, which has never been done before. So I think it's important that we do that.
To articulate that a little bit as well, many of the communities that we have legislative bodies, and then they also have strong city administrators or other executives. And you know, we represent the county is the way that we view it. We do a lot of work with Candace Miller. We do a lot of work with the executive. We've done a lot of work in the past with the prosecutor, and look forward to working with Mr. Lucido. We view our job up here is to be an extension of the county as priorities come up and issues come up, and making sure that we're doing what we can to help.
To further clarify, Commissioner Van Siegel, the lobbyist payment is in the executive's budget, and it's actually the lobbyist function is in the charter. So it's spelled in the county charter where the lobbyist is in our organization chart. So technically the lobbyist is paid out of the executive's office budget. So
okay,
that gives some clarification.
I certainly appreciate your efforts to reach out to the rest of the commissioners and to have us be inclusive. I was sort of wondering if when we submit our 13 proposed projects, if they had to go through a approval cycle with Executive Hackle.
Well, we're gonna go through them, and we'll talk. We don't need an approval. We're not going to use his approval, but we'll go through each year. Going to submit a project or two, and we'll look at the list, and I'll share them with everybody else, so we all know what we have, and then we'll push them on up. So, but we don't need approval. We're going to work cooperatively. We're going to put them together. We're going to share them with everybody else to see what the project list is. We'll submit them to Gary O, and of course I'll share them with the executive too, and we'll go forward. I mean, would be against putting it. Well, go ahead.
I was just I have my answer. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Commissioner Van Sinkle. I appreciate it. Let's see who else is next. Commissioner on the second round, Commissioner Matuzik.
Thank you, Chair. I was somewhat taken aback, Chair. I'm actually addressing you as opposed to the lobbyist. When I got your memo asking for a project, it assumes a tremendous amount of information that I would suspect most of us don't have. funding that's required. That was one of your words. That one really threw me off. Required approval. It requires that we know the state budget intimately so we can figure out what projects may or may not be covered. It assumes that we're going to be able to get to all of our local leadership in a fashion and that's meaningful in a fairly short time. And then we end up with this list of 13 projects. I really hate to out Republican my Republican colleagues here, but I really hate pork barrel politics. I object to it. I would rather we take the 13 projects, sit down as a group, sort of figure out what's realistic in terms of moving the most amount of people forward. I mean, I think dividing it into 13 things is not helpful. A discussion about what would really together move the county forward, I think would be very helpful and helps to focus the efforts of our lobbyists and anybody else, our state delegation, our federal delegation. This 13 seems like a scattered sort of thing to me, not particularly effective in terms of focusing the efforts of this lobbying firm that I guess we don't pay for, the exec pays for, but we use. I find I'm just having great difficulty with the whole process here. And I'm not clear that we're giving our lobbyists clear direction. Lobbyists work best when they have clear direction. I've worked with many lobbyists. I always appreciated the phone call that said, this bill's been introduced. What do you think about it? What should we do with it? Do we have a position on it? That's useful to me. Submitting a project for a bike path or a road project or an economic development project that's singular to Clinton Township is fine. And I'm going to come up with a list if that's what we're going to do. But I'm not clear that moves us forward as a county, nor does it help our lobbyists move us forward. And we, in my opinion, as the county commission, should have our own lobbyists as opposed to the executives. And that's an opinion and not a question. Thank you, Mr. Chair.
Thank you, Commissioner Matuszak. I appreciate your commission and your thoughts. Let's see. Commissioner Ha.
Thanks, Chair. The first thing I wanted to touch on is we're not asking the lobbyists to circulate to us bills and get our opinion on them. When I was up there in the first year, there were over 11,000 bills put through. That's what we have representatives and senators for. They're our voice into the bills. Secondly, the chairman is attempting to form a coalition with the executive's office, establishing priorities for our lobbyists to act on behalf of Macomb County. And part of this is my suggestion to Don, because the first 2 years that I sat there, we never knew what the lobbyist was working on. We had no idea. There was no communication between the executive office and our former board chairman. None whatsoever. We had him show up and he says, what is it you guys want? So our chairman has tried to establish a prioritization list to work together with the county executive, so at least we give them some direction. We're not going to respond to bills, and we're not going to respond to committee activity up in Lansing, or we'd be meeting 12 hours a day, 7 days a week. That's not our role. That's what we have representatives and senators for. So I commend Don on trying a new initiative so that we can get at least an opportunity to put stuff back into our own districts if it's feasible. We can put a list of 13 or 1,300 together. It's not going to guarantee one thing, but what it will guarantee is a condensed effort in Macomb County between the executive's office and the county commissioners, So that they're going down the same path. We're not asking him to replace our representatives and senators. That's not the role of a lobbyist. And Jeff and Phil both know this because in the course of a year, we probably dealt with anywhere between 50 and 100 lobbyists on different issues. They came and asked for our opinion and tried to present their client's opinion. So being a multi-client lobbyist, and by the way, I think Gary has identified how much representation they have in government across the state of Michigan. They're one of the most effective, if not the most effective firm up there. So to have them work on the Mclaren issue, I'll bet there's not 3 people on this meeting that even knew the Mclaren issue was taking place. And they're trying to acquire $5 million for a local initiative in Macomb County. So I commend Don for trying to do what he's doing. It was a suggestion that came up in the last session to try and be more effective as representation for all of Macomb County. So that's my opinion. That's not a question. Thank you.
Thank you, Commissioner Hogg. Commissioner Song on the second round.
Thank you, Chair. And Commissioner Harold and Chair Brown, I don't disagree with either of you because obviously we're all here to support our community and to improve the infrastructure in our communities. But $60,000 last year, and based on what Mr. Owens has been telling us, that he hasn't done anything because of the pandemic, I think is very wasteful money. And I do agree that we do need to be more effective, but I want to see more measurable goals met because I think this $60,000 is not being put to good use. Thank you.
Thank you, Commissioner. I appreciate that. Well, it's not a zero-sum game. We can advocate for projects that are important to the people that elected you in your districts using the county's staff and support, and maybe get a return of their tax dollars back from Lansing or Washington. At the same time, our county lobby is advocating for $35 million to help complete the Mound Road project, which benefits everyone in Southeast Michigan, or the $35 million for the hospital access that they've been advocating for. If you got any one of those things, $60,000 getting return on $3.5 million or $35 million is a pretty good investment, I would say. So the return on investment in our lobbyists can be documented very much, and we're going to document it going forward. I can't control what happened in the past, but we're going to contract it now. And by us giving them a list and starting the dialogue, this is a new process. So we'll be able to document how effective were you? And that may be in dollars. It may just be in terms of numbers that put our local people in contact with something else. Yeah, those are small issues in the scheme of the county thing, but we should be able to do everything. We look out for all the people of the county. 8 Mile Road is just as important to me as Boardman Road on the north end of the county. And we need to advocate for everyone. And we're going to give them an opportunity to document their approvals. And that I think they've got the experience to do it. And I'm willing to try. So you're willing to submit a project or two if you want. You don't have to if you don't want to, but I hope you would. Yeah, I know some of the information is, some of you'll know various different, some of you'll be aware of projects in your community because you're elected, right? You got elected, you know what's going on in your community, generally speaking, and you know if someone was advocating for a particular project or a bridge. You don't need to know the details. Say, well, they want money for the bridge. Okay, we'll put it down there. We'll figure that out. We'll get the details. You don't have to have the whole plan. You know, the trustee came to me the other day looking for money for a park that they wanted to build in the township. So, do you got any plans, any right-of-way plans? What's the township done? They hadn't done much about it at all. I says, well, when the time comes, you know, maybe we can apply for DNR trust fund once the township gets their ducks in a row. So it could be a variety of things, but you don't have to have all the details figured out. It's the goal. And so we want to move those forward. So it's not perfect. It's not perfect, but we're going to get there. We're going to get there together. And let's see how it goes. Is there anybody else who wants to speak? I don't see anyone in the speaker's queue. There's been a motion made. Oh, Commissioner Nard, go ahead. Sorry.
Yeah.
Please go right ahead.
Oh my goodness. Yeah, I've been trying to speak for the longest. You know,
I'm sorry.
I got kind of confused because, you know, all the other stuff that went on. I just wanted to say, when I saw the email, I was very excited that you included us as commissioners to submit ideas, because being on the south end of Warren and being in the largest city in Michigan, and probably, I mean, the third largest city in Michigan, and being probably the largest city in Macomb County, it was quite inviting for me to be able to come up with some ideas. So I was very happy about that. I do like the idea that we're trying to develop relationships with the executives, some things that I've noticed hadn't been done before. I've been, for the last 10 years, I've tried to get on the, city council. So I kind of knew a little bit about what was going on in the government, and I've never seen anything like this. So I'm very happy to try to connect with people, no matter what political party they're from or whatever, just people helping people in the community. And so I'm happy about that. I wanted to ask Gary, I lost some of my thoughts, and then some of my things were answered when Commissioner Kraft asked that Mound Road project, which is in my community, which is great. But I wanted to kind of ask Gary, did he think that, I noticed in other counties, like when you go down 75 going north, you can see where they have like for Oakland County, where Auburn Hills is. I'd like to see some type of sign, because Warren is the third largest city, something showing that we're entering into Warren right off of like 696. Would that be considered some type of an infrastructure project that you guys were talking about?
I don't know what. I just to answer your question, Commissioner, and I'll get a little bit of feedback from your microphone, just when I talk. But the answer is I don't know. I don't know if MDOT participates in those projects or not. But I am certainly willing to find out on what some of those signed projects look like and where the funding comes from.
Okay. Yeah, and then all my other questions were answered. But, again, I'm just happy that we're included. And then and so I can, my constituents now know that I am working for them, and I'm being included in what's going on. I really appreciate that. Thank you, Chair Brown.
Thank you. Anyone else that had a hand up I didn't see? Okay, great. The motion's been made and supported. Gary, thank you for coming down. We'll schedule again soon. So you heard what the plan is. We're looking forward to working with you closely going forward. So
thank you for having me.
Please call the vote.
Michelle, while the vote's being taken, can you adjust your camera? We're only seeing half of your head.
That motion passes 13-0.
Okay, thank you. Thank you, Commissioners. Item number 7B is the Equalization Department overview. We have Kristen Seeloff, a director of our Equalization Department, here to give us a presentation. Kristen, are you available?
I'm here, Commissioner.
Chair, motion to receive and file.
Thank you, Commissioner Song. Very good. All right. Go ahead, Ms. Seeloff.
Well, good afternoon, everyone. It's great to see some very familiar faces and some not so familiar, but you will see me a couple times a year. So this is the first opportunity to introduce myself to all of you. My name is Kristen Seeloff.
Yeah, so we're very lucky to have Kristen on our staff. She comes with a wealth of experience. Why don't you give a little bit of background? We're very lucky to have you as a high-level floor assessor. You've got a lot of extensive background in. Why don't you brag about yourself for a minute? Tell them a little bit about your background, because we're really glad to get you when we hired you several years ago.
Well, thank you so much for that, Commissioner Brown. I'm not one to brag about myself. You will hear me more often than not talk about how wonderful my staff is. They do all the hard work, and I just make it pretty and bring it to all of you in a sensible format. But it's very interesting. My first county boss is actually sitting in on this meeting, Dr. Amboyer. I worked with him way back when I was quite a few years younger at the Macomb County Jail. So I started there a long time ago. And then I went to Shelby Township, where I went through the assessing department there, worked there for 18 years, went to Independence Township, was the director of assessing there for a period of 4 years. And then I'm shortly going to be here for 6 years. In August is my 6th anniversary, but this is my 6th equalization report coming before the commissioners. I am a unique position at the county in that I am appointed by all of you, but I work for the executive. So I am right in the middle of everybody, and so I make everybody happy to the best of my ability. Sometimes my numbers aren't so great, but this year they look pretty good despite what we've all been through in the last year. So I'm looking forward to giving a short presentation on what equalization is and then presenting the materials to you.
Thank you.
So if nobody has any questions right there, I'm going to jump in and put my presentation up there, and fingers crossed that I do this correctly. I have never quite done this before. Let's see. I'm going to share it. Okay, so I can't see any of you, but can you see my presentation?
Yes, we can see it. Thank you.
Okay, great. So I'm just going to quickly buzz through this. It's 18 slides. We're not going to spend time on all of those, but I just want to give you a little introduction into what equalization is. I would bet that most of the newer, at least the newer commissioners, have never even heard of equalization, and you are a huge part of that process. So let's just jump through this real quickly, and hopefully it's advanced to the next screen. We are located on the 6th floor of the admin building. If we ever get back to some semblance of normal, feel free to come down and visit us at any time. We have a very talented staff. Everybody is state certified. As you can see here, there are 10 of us. And because I just said all of this stuff, we can go right on to the most important slide in this presentation, the responsibilities of the equalization department. We perform equalization studies, which study the values at the local level to make sure that they fall within specific parameters as designated by state statute. We do that in the month of December. We then determine equalization ratios and multipliers, which indicate to the local units how much of an increase or decrease they need to get to meet those specific parameters according to statute. County equalization report, the month of April, that's why we're here today. I also do a personal property summary report. For some of you that may not be aware, back in 2014, we started exempting some of the industrial and commercial personal property. And so because tax dollars and different things were funded by those tax levies, some of the essential services are reimbursed through an entirely different way of collecting taxes for that personal property, and so I have to report those to the state. We also have millage reduction fraction calculations that have to be calculated each year. I calculate those for every taxing authority, every local unit, library, school district, county. I calculate those for every taxing authority and put those into a report format. Those are then used to roll back the millage rates that will be requested by the local units in a millage or tax rate request document that will come before you sometime in the month of October. I also report those directly to the Department of Treasury, and then at that same time, I will bring forth a county apportionment report for all of you to approve as well. So all of these reports and these different things can be found on our equalization department website at the address below. Does anybody have any quick questions on that? If not, I'm going to keep rolling through this.
I have a question. How many hits does that website get for people pulling some of these reports off of the website?
No, I don't know, but I would imagine quite a few, because anybody that calls me, I'll say, "Oh, have you ever been to our website?" I'm really proud of my staff, and especially the gal that handles all of this for me, and that we do provide all of this information to everybody all the time online. In the old days, we used to mail out all of these documents to all the different entities, and that was one of the first things that I did. I got rid of our postage requirements for all of these things, because why not just go to the website and find them? So we do get a lot of hits, I'm sure. I don't know what the actual number is.
Okay, thank you.
You're welcome. Okay, so then purpose of county equalization, why are we here? We're here to make sure that the assessments determined at the local level are fair and equitable. And the most important words on this slide right here is county equalization does not determine an individual's property assessment. We do everything by class, per unit. So we do not get involved with individual property assessments. We look at them on a whole or an aggregate manner. Equalization is mandated by Section 211.34 of Michigan's General Property Tax Act. And if you're really having trouble falling asleep, I highly recommend that. Will help you.
Kristen, Commissioner Kleinfeld had a question.
Sure.
I was going to wait for the end, Chair, but thank you. I just wanted to say, Kristen, we'll never hold the numbers against you because we know you're just being honest. And also, your field is not an easy one to find qualified individuals, and we're lucky to have you. Thank you. That's all I have.
Well, thank you so much.
Thank you.
Thank you so much for that. I appreciate that. I'm one of like 100 people qualified to be the equalization director with a Michigan Master Assessing Officer designation. There's only about 100 of us that are actively working. There might be 120 certified, but only 100 of us are actively working, and so it is a very small field of candidates. But I'm honored and very blessed, to be quite honest, to be your equalization director. So moving forward real quick, 21134.1 says that you guys are supposed to do this work in April. MCL 209.51 says that at this meeting today, the Tuesday following the second Monday in April, you will meet to equalize the assessment rolls. 21134.2 says that you'll be examining the assessment rolls of the townships and cities to make sure that the assessments are equally and uniformly assessed. However, 21134.3 saves you from that because it also establishes a department to do that for you and a director to oversee the personnel within that department. So that saves you the old days of having to bring all those tax rolls in and go line by line through. The meetings back then were much longer, guaranteed. So 34A, I prepare a tabular statement each year of those ratios and those estimated multipliers. By law, I have to publish that in February. So how do I get those ratios? We do county equalization studies. We do either a sales study if we have enough sample sales within a property class. Residential, we do. All units except for Memphis typically have enough residential sales to study the values and compare them to their corresponding assessment. When we don't have enough sales, we do appraisal studies, and rather than outside influences coming up with a value like we do with an actual property sale or a transfer, my staff goes out and does independent appraisals on selected properties within those property classes. So it's typically agricultural, commercial, and industrial classes that we don't have enough sales. And it's basically assessment divided by sale price equals ratio, or assessment divided by our appraisal equals the ratio. There's a couple examples there. And again, we do it in an aggregate. So the total commercial property class in Centerline is studied, and then the bottom line is where we come up. The aggregate values at the end is where we come up with all of these numbers. This looks like a lot. I'm not gonna go into a lot of detail, but and I don't even know if you guys can see these numbers, but just to pick one, Centerline, the commercial ratio is 46.42. In the state of Michigan, assessments are required to be between 49 and 50% of true cash value. So the commercial class in Centerline is only at 46.42, which means they need to bump up the values or the assessments within the commercial class there. And the factor gives the amount that they need to increase by. So the factor, the corresponding factor for that ratio would be 7.7%. That's not an across the board thing. That's on the class as a whole. So some commercial values will go up, some will go down, but at the end, when they come back to me with all of their numbers, they need to have increased the entire class by 7.7% to fall within that 49 to 50. This is published in the newspaper every single year in February. So it's a good indication of where we're headed. And if anybody, has any questions about that, feel free to contact me separately, and I can really get in depth if you want to know how this was, how these numbers were actually developed. Moving on, so once I give those ratios to everybody, if you think about it, it's not your local assessor that's the bad guy, right? Because I just told them how far up or down their values need to go. So technically, I would say I'm the bad guy. I'm the one that tells them to increase the values. So remember that if you get calls from your constituents and point them to me, because I am the bad person. But it's actually good because we all benefit from the values that we put together. So they put their stuff together. They send out their notices of assessment. They hold their March board of review for any taxpayers who wish to protest their assessment. At the conclusion of the March board of review, they bring all of their reports to me, and then we start equalizing. And that's why we're here today. So this is probably the point of this presentation where I'm going to stop, because this is where we are, and I apologize. I needed to get this presentation out to everybody, and I didn't have a chance to put the new ones in. But when we get to the actual report, if you haven't already looked at it, this is 2 of the pages that would be in the report that I'm going to present to you next. The table of contents is pretty detailed. And then we have breakdowns of all the different property classes, the assessments to true cash, and then the indicated ratios. And no factors this year. Everybody did exactly what they were supposed to do. And we're looking pretty good, which was surprising, to be quite honest, with what we had to deal with. So at this point, if anybody has any additional questions, I'd be happy to answer them for you. And the rest of the presentation, feel free to go through that, because you will see me later in the year. And there's information on each slide that would let you know what the other reports and things that Equalization does are all about.
Commissioner Kraft.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. Hi, Kristen. Thank you for the report.
Hi.
Going back a couple slides where you listed all the communities and the categories, there's one category that was called developmental. Near the end there on the right, what would classify as developmental?
Olden days.
You're breaking up. I can't understand you.
I'm breaking up. I'm sorry.
Mute, and it might work.
Thank you, Veronica.
Okay, can you guys hear me now?
I can. That was good. Yes.
Okay, so these classes on here: agricultural, commercial, industrial, residential, timber cutover, and developmental are the 6 classifications of real property. There's real property and personal property. Real property is the building and the land that the buildings are attached to. Personal property are the items within the specific businesses, computer software, desks, signage, different things. That would be under the personal category. Timber cutover, obviously, we don't have any of that because we're not doing any forestry work in Macomb County. Developmental, we used to have. And developmental was when the county was younger, and mostly in the northern communities, north of Hall Road, where we had farms that were maybe converting to something else, residential. And so they would call them developmental because it's studied a little bit differently. If you have large tracts of land that aren't being farmed, but they're in the agricultural class, and the farmer's holding it to turn it into residential subdivisions, developmental would be a good place because we could study those a little bit differently than we would true agricultural or actively farmed properties. That's what developmental would be.
Got it. Thank you, Kristen. Thank you, Mr. Chair.
You're welcome.
Thank you. Commissioner Kleinfeld.
Oh, I'm sorry. I didn't intend on speaking.
Okay, all right. Commissioner Zinner.
Hi, Kristen. When you're going through there, you mentioned schools.
Yes.
Do you see when schools are in the red? When the district is in the red?
No, I do not. No, I don't get into any of the budgeting process of the taxing authorities. The only areas of the taxing authority that I am privy to would be the assessed values and the taxable values. And then I need those numbers in order to calculate any millage reduction fractions. And, you know, I guess in the idea of their millage rates having to be rolled back, you know, that would be something that I would see, and that would be included in some of the things that would be pertinent for their budgeting purposes and determining whether or not they can meet specific obligations. I know our finance director is very keen on wanting to know what our millage reduction fraction is every year so that he can put his budgets together. So, I mean, those are very, very important things, because if you're planning on a specific millage rate to generate a specific tax levy, and then I'm going to roll it back because of the millage reduction fraction that's calculated based on, you know, what's going on in the community, then they may need to approve an additional millage or try to find some other way of funding prior to their budgets. And now is the time when the budgets are happening. So most of those key players are in contact with me. Do you have the millage reduction fractions yet? You know, I do have them. I have started them. I'm just waiting for the other counties, the inter-county reports to come through. But yeah, that would be the only part of the school district that I would have any insight into.
Thank you.
You're welcome.
Thank you. Commissioner Matuzik.
Hi, Kristen. Thanks for the great report. Just a question. I appreciate Phil asking the question because I was going to ask what developmental was as well. The other question I had was utilities. Obviously, we don't have any large generating plants in the county in the same way they do in other places. So, am I assuming this utilities are the transmission lines, the substations, those sorts of things?
A lot of the utilities are underground, the gas lines and what have you. Those are those would be reported through the personal property statements. Those are not exempted yet. We'll see. I know there has been talk of legislation in the same manner that we did exempt some of the industrial personal and commercial personal. But yeah, the utility personal property would be those types of items. Yes, the personal property associated with the lines. There are specific items with cell tower locations, you know, maybe not the physical pole, but the antennas and the programming involved with running the lines and generators to run those. All of that stuff would be considered in the personal property. They're all kind of lumped together for equalization purposes. All of the personal property is lumped together into one ratio. I do measure it separately, but it's lumped together as one ratio.
Thank you. I was just curious about what was in that category.
Yeah.
So that's a great explanation. Thank you. Thank you, Mr. Chair.
Thank you, Commissioner. Commissioner Van Single.
Thank you, Chair. Very busy report, Kristen. A lot of information there.
Yeah.
On the slide you have up, it sort of raises the question in my mind there's something like 24 different municipalities or governmental units, whatever there. Do you know, or is there some statistics in the county that say how much of the of each of those units is covered by agricultural, commercial, industrial, residential, by acreage. I mean, I understand the underground utilities may not even show up if they're under somebody else's ground.
So in regards to the utility personal property, you mean?
Well, yeah, I was sort of saying that really didn't apply to my question. Do you know what percentage of the surface area of Centerline, for instance, is covered with commercial property, industrial property, residential property?
No, and the reason is because the local units have the ability to change their zoning at any given time. You can have a residential house on a main road and it's zoned commercial, but that's actually a residential class property. So it would be difficult, if not impossible, to fine tune that. I know there is some acreage discussed, and I apologize, I'm going to look over here at my report that we're going to talk about in a few minutes. One of the reports that I have does talk about statements of acreage and that kind of thing on it, and I'm not exactly sure where that is, but well, I can look that up for you to give more of a general. What I can do and what I do provide in the report is the number of parcels associated with each property class, not necessarily acreage.
Okay, that's sort of where I was going, because I was wondering if the various governmental units could use any of your reports to sort of guide them as, do we need more commercial? Do we need less commercial? Do we need a little bit of more industrial or less or whatever to sort of balance things out?
You know, my report is always a tool and it's always available for anybody that wants to look at it. I really think that the local unit or even our own planning department would be a much better advocate for that type of application. I mean, our planning department has different layers of their map, and they can show everything that's commercial, everything that's. We don't really do that in equalization, but planning would have that ability, and I do believe most of the units do utilize our GIS mapping through planning. So that would probably be a much better than anything that I would have to offer. I'm more value based, not necessarily size wise, if that makes sense.
It does, and that's one of the things that these meetings are useful for, is to pick people's brains like yours to find out where we should go for the answers we're looking for. So thank you.
That's where I would go. That's where I would go, to planning.
Thank you. Thank you, Chair.
Are there any others?
Commissioners, this is Michael. I don't know if Commissioner Brown's having some technical difficulties, but we don't have any other speakers listed, and so I'll prompt the vote and wait for the chair to reconnect.
Yeah, go right ahead. Please vote.
Zinner's voting yes. I'm having a problem by sending my vote.
And that motion passes unanimously.
Thank you. Was making sure my mic was on mute when I wasn't talking, so not to contribute to the already staticky connections. I need item number 8 is item 8 is the report from the Department of 2021 Macomb Equalization Report. Again, we have Director Seeloff here to talk about that report. Can I get a motion to approve?
Motion to approve by Farrington.
Thank you, Commissioner Farrington. Is there support?
Support by Nard.
Support by Commissioner Nard. Please proceed, Ms. Seeloff.
Okay, so this report is 59 pages long, I believe. I'm hoping that my page numbers, if I refer to them, will match your agenda packet. I did try to grab that before I jumped on here. Sometimes we're not so lucky. Just a few items that I think are interesting for our commissioners to look at, because again, this is a very involved report. Hopefully page 25 of your agenda packet refers to the SEB taxable value line graph. Is that, if somebody could just give me a thumbs up that that's actually what it is that what is on your agenda packet? Anyone?
Staff?
Kristen, they don't have the paper packet since we're virtual, so they're looking at the attachment as the PDF.
Oh, okay. Well, that's even better. Then we can go right off of I can go right off of the table of contents. If you guys would want to turn to page 5 of that, there should be a state equalized value and a taxable value line graph. If everybody can see that. That to me is probably a very interesting tool to those of you who may not have been commissioners in the past. It gives a story from 2005 to present, where we were, where we peaked back in 2008, where we totally crashed in 2012. It took us 4 years to fully see that crash, and then the slow progression back. Unfortunately, we still aren't there on taxable values. We are so close. We have exceeded where we were with the assessments, but it took that long for the county values to recover. So it is a good thing. It took a little bit longer than maybe we were hoping, but 10, 12 years, that's not too bad for as far as we dropped. The next point of interest would be where we start. Let's see, that would be, I'm sorry, I'm going to be flipping back and forth. The county recommended equalized values, that begins on page 7, and there's a few pages there. It lists all the different units, all the different values by class, the assessment, and what I'm recommending is the county equalized value. There are no factors. Everybody hit their mark. Everybody was between 49 and 50%. So my recommendation to all of you would just be approving their assessed values as filed with me as the county equalized values. And then the next section of interest would be where we start on page 11 of the report. That's where the city of Centerline, all the local unit, individual breakdowns, parcel counts, assessed values, ratio to true cash, the true cash, and then the recommended county equalized values are there with the factors. So we go through, instead of having a big tabular report, you guys can look at your own individual local unit and see all of those figures right there. And then at the end of that, that whole section.
I'm sorry, Chair. I just want to do a point of order real quick.
Yeah, please.
Our pages don't have numbers on them, but so for the commissioners, just so they know, the blue bar at the top has like 11 of 59. You can see what page you're on by looking at that. So that they could follow you. I just wanted to interject. Sorry about that, Chair.
Yeah, next time we'll have it on the screen so we could follow along like the other presentation. That'd be easier for everyone. So.
Right.
So.
Sorry about that.
Okay, go ahead.
Okay.
58 pages is a big doc, so.
Right, yes, it is, and I don't want to spend too much more time on this for you guys. On page 40 would be the summary page, and it says summary of 2021 county equalized valuation changes, and that's the important one. That's the one that lets us know we had market increases of 4% last year, which is pretty incredible during a pandemic, if you ask me, to have 4% market increases. We did have sales occurring in parking lots, one car here, one car there, and a person in the middle shuttling paperwork back and forth. We did not see any decline in sales, which I just find remarkable for what what the whole world was going through last year. We also have about 1% increase in our new construction. So we are still a viable community for new construction. That's going to be primarily north of Hall Road in those communities up there. And then moving through the document, another page, let's see, average residential true cash value. On page 44, this is something that commissioners like to sometimes know about. It gives you an idea roughly of the average residential property within your communities. And it's basically just the total assessed value divided by the number of residential parcels. So that includes some vacant properties and improved. But that's just kind of something interesting to make note of. And then the very next page after that is the ad valorem taxable value change. And it just gives a comparison of last year to this year. Overall values increased by about 3.8%. And what I always like to point out is this report does isolate those north of Hall Road, those south of Hall Road. A few years ago, there was a significant change in those northern, the southern properties as compared to the northern, because those back in 08 were hit the hardest and dropped the farthest. And it took a while for them to catch up, but then when they did start catching up, they were really jumping up in comparison to the northern ones. But it looks like we're starting to level off a little bit, and the majority for that is because of the personal property falling off the rolls, primarily in the southern communities, and then the new construction being in the northern communities. So, and then after that are just the required reports that I have to file with Department of Treasury. As soon as you guys okay this report, I'm going to hit send on that and send all of these values off to Lansing so that they can begin the state equalization process. But I can't do that until you guys give the okay on these. So if anybody has any questions about any of the figures or the individual pages or sections of this report, I'd be happy to answer any of those questions for you.
I don't see anyone on the list. Does anyone have any questions? How has the lack of housing sales affected what you do in your job?
We haven't seen that. We have not seen that. You know, in a given sales study period, and we use a 2-year sales study period, we're a lagging time for when we develop those ratios, when we perform those sales studies, like I talked about earlier. And, you know, we didn't really see much of a decrease, and it was actually quite surprising. Where it's really going to get interesting is the commercial. You know, what happened with those? You know, we're talking with some state legislators about the rules for decline or decreasing occupancy and how we can value those. You know, many of those commercial structures were closed for a good majority of the year last year. Some, if not most, are still operating at much smaller than 100% occupancy. And so trying to fairly value those is going to be difficult. I have never had how to value a property in a pandemic class. It's all very new to anybody that's living and breathing today. So we are working on that, but we have to have the data to study before we can figure out how to value them. And so unfortunately it is lagging, but we're gonna focus on that quite a bit this year and have lots of conversations with our partners and the assessors at the local level. And then I am very fortunate because I have the other 82 counties to talk about what are you guys doing and what kind of influences and effects are you seeing in your counties. So, you know, there's more to come on that.
You were one time, or you're still involved in the statewide association. You were president of that association at one time, weren't you? The Statewide Assessors Association. You were involved in, or maybe you still are.
I have been on many committees. I still consider myself too new to be involved with the equalization directors. I still learn something every day. But I have been on the boards of the Michigan Association of Assessing Officers. I've been on that one. I was the president for the Macomb Assessors Organization. I was the former president for the American Society of Appraisers Detroit chapter, which is a worldwide affiliation. So I'm, you know, I've been around, which is.
So you're monitoring the trends
Yeah. Oh yeah. And if I don't know the answer, I know somebody who might. And so if you are looking for anything, you know, don't hesitate to call. That's my job. It's my job to do this work on your behalf. And so it's my pleasure to do so.
Well, if there's issues in Lansing that you need attention with, we just had a discussion with our lobbyist. By all means, whisper in our ears. We're happy to. We might know somebody we could help us with that. So
the veterans exemption is the next one that's on our radar. How to deal with the veterans exemption. And so far, according to MML, we have the most, more than Oakland County. So there you are. And I see.
Very good. Well, that'll be a discussion for a future date.
Right.
Any other questions? We have a motion that's been made and supported to receive and file.
Chair Brown, this is Commissioner Sabatini. I'd like to ask a quick question if I could.
Please go ahead, Joe. Commissioner Sabatini, excuse me.
Hi, Kristen. Good to see you again. It's been a while.
Yes, it is.
Couple questions for you. Specifically to Macomb Township, I was excited to see that the year-over-year growth there was almost 15%. And I take it that's probably because of all the new construction that's going on North Pole, and that's obviously a hot spot there relative to that. Can you tell me, kind of going forward, because I know the increased construction costs that are happening now are really, I would say, detrimental in affecting the housing supply out there. In regards to new starts, there's been a lot of talk of construction starts, but unfortunately, I think that's been set back a little bit just because of the increased cost and the supply chain issues that builders are dealing with. Can you just tell me how that's going to affect your report going forward? Or what do you anticipate that doing to the report going forward?
So if I had my crystal ball for you today, I could probably answer that. The way that we value property, we are prescribed by the State Tax Commission to use a manual that has specific costs in it. And those costs are used by everybody within the state. And so those costs would include the increases for the materials, including labor. And we kind of had that happen back when we crashed. It did have an effect on the lumber costs, and nobody was working, and it's all in relation to what's going on in the world. How that's going to affect values in Macomb Township or even in the county, it's so broad. The State Tax Commission also supplies us with a county multiplier. I don't have any say in that. That's something that's given to us by the state. So we're kind of limited on how we can value the properties, using the same ones, like I said, that everybody else is using. It would depend, I guess, on what Macomb Township is seeing within their own communities. If the lumber prices are too much for the local builders and they just say, forget it, we can't, unless we have a surefire purchase agreement with somebody, we're not going to build spec houses. We're only going to build ones to suit. Then we'll see a slowdown and a potential decrease in that ending taxable value and subsequent taxes. It's so, right now it's so up in the air for me. We haven't even begun to do our studies yet. We haven't even received the new values. We haven't even barely rolled our system to start doing those. So it's
right. I'm just kind of going back to the crash because living through that and dealing with that whole that time frame, and I'm just wondering, back, I remember during that time frame, appraisers were having big issues with trying to get valuations done because there weren't enough comps, and I'm just wondering, is that going to happen again? with that market, because, appraisers are not going to be allocating the proper cost to it because they can't. They have to use, a comparable sale approach. And I'm just wondering if we're going to be kind of in that same type of situation again.
To be honest with you, I kind of spoke with Steve Smeagol about this a little bit. I don't think so, because the difference between what we're going through now and what we went through back then was the businesses left. People lost their jobs. People were not working. The banks were not loaning money. There was like it was like a crazy circle of all those different things all coming into play all at the same time, the perfect storm, if you will. Here, we're still working maybe a little bit differently. Jobs are coming back. New jobs are being created. The banks haven't stopped lending that I know of. It's a little bit different world in regards to the money flow. That's the key. As long as people can borrow money, then they can build. And it's just to the point of how much is too expensive to build. It's a little bit different than what we had back when we crashed. The crash was a perfect storm. Everything bad that could possibly happen all happened at the same time. I don't think we have that yet. That's not what we're seeing yet. If that helps, that would be my opinion. And I mean, I don't really know for sure, but I'm not feeling it, especially because the CPI this year, the Consumer Price Index that the taxable values increased by, was only 1.4. And that takes into consideration all of the different markets and things that are happening in the world, dollar, gold values, all of that stuff. And we still managed to increase our taxable value by almost 4%. We didn't do that when our CPI was 2.4. Last year, it wasn't going up that much. So it's like, so far it's okay. I like a nice steady 2% per year. That's what I like to see. That's safe. Anytime you get beyond that, then you create that bubble and you get inflated. And is this a real value? And 2%, 2.5%, 3%. That's a nice steady rate of increase.
Okay.
Healthy market. Healthy market.
One other quick question. The exempt properties that you have listed.
Yes.
I noticed that there are a number, obviously every community is different. And I'm speaking specifically to Macomb Township, which I represent. What would be like those specific exempt properties? You may have talked about this in the department overview and I may have missed it, but
No.
what would be specifically exempt and who determines
Your township hall. The library, if the township owns it, a school building. There are specific properties that qualify under exempt. And, so those would be what would be in that particular category. Different types of personal property is exempt. So that would fall into an exempt parcel. There's quite a few. There's a lot of property exemptions. Sometimes we are exemption assessors. Sometimes it feels like that's what we're doing, but like a veteran's exemption would not fall under that. I'm talking statutorily, you don't have to value this property ever, not one that would depend on a specific owner's situation. Like our building, that kind of thing, recreation buildings, libraries, those types of things, post office. Those are all exempt.
That's what I thought. Okay. Thank you, Kristen. Thank you, Chair.
Thank you, Commissioner Sabatini. Anyone else? A lot of good information here to dig into, and we could ask some more questions for a long time, but we'll save some of those for you for offline. Motion's been, thank you very much. We'll see you in a month or two anyway, again.
Okay,
so
thank you.
Need a motion motions have been made and supported. Please vote.
Zinner, yes.
Thank you.
That motion passes unanimously.
Very good. Thank you. Item 9, the Government Oversight Committee recommendations. Updated Ethics Board Rules of Procedures. that was adopted or sent from Oversight Committee to this committee for adoption. Need a motion to adopt?
Mr. Chair, a point of order
Yes.
from Commissioner Matuzik.
Yes.
Just because I'm not sure how to handle this, I'm making a point of order.
Okay.
In the document itself
Okay.
that we're voting on,
All right.
page 13 of 18 is really messed up in terms of spacing. If you go to the 13 of 18 at the top there,
Okay.
it's clearly it's a matter of spacing things that got thrown off, but I don't want us to adopt a document that has a page that's sort of
It looks messed up. Yeah.
So I don't know if we can adopt it.
Well, we could, you know what, we'll get it adjusted, we'll correct it, and we'll bring it back to us on the 29th. Or we got another full board meeting at the end of the month.
Okay.
We'll bring it back then, so it's corrected, along with any other corrections that commissioners may have. Does anybody else have any other recommendations or adjustments?
Excuse me, Chair Brown, this is Crystal.
Yes.
It might be because of the way she's viewing it. When you download it in Word, it displays.
Yeah, I didn't know if it's
okay.
If it's just because we're looking at it on a computer screen, or if it's when it downloads, it looks fine.
Yes,
I didn't download it. I'm just looking at it.
Okay, when you open it in Word, it displays fine, and we actually need to adopt that this week because we had 60 days from when they submitted it, so that's why it's on this full board and not at the end of the month.
All right.
Well, I
No,
had the same reaction,
if it
Commissioner
prints out
Matuzik.
fine, then it's fine with me. I just didn't want us to adopt something that was not correct. So I will make the motion to adopt it.
Thank you, Commissioner Matuzik. Is there
Zimmer,
support?
second.
Okay. All right. Let's see. Any discussion on this item? Let's see. I don't see anyone on the list. Please vote.
Zinner, yes.
That motion passes unanimously.
Okay, great. Item 10 is new business. Any new business to come before the committee?
I have something, Chair. It's
Please,
fine.
go ahead.
Okay, a couple of things. I just want to remind everybody that even if you're the one that has the floor, or you're the chair, or you're the presenter from the administrative point of view, when you're not speaking, even after you've asked your question, you have to mute, or we're going to get the feedback. So I just want to remind everybody of that. The veterans with disabilities, the property tax exemption she's referring to refers to certain vets with disabilities. It's a 100% exemption. And Mac's position is that's wonderful. But if the state's going to make a law of that nature, then the state needs to make the counties whole on the money. We can't have a system where the state is passing all these laws. There's an exemption for this, there's an exemption for that, but it's the counties that lose the money, not the state. So just wanted to let you guys know that every time they get a bright idea in Lansing and they do a property tax exemption, it's easy for them to do because we're the ones losing the money. Now, with respect to Mac, having Gary Owens on reminded me that I had promised to bring back Mac to do their update to you at the beginning of the year. Because we knew there were a bunch of new commissioners coming in. So I told Mac, we'll get you in as soon as possible. I'm not sharing any committees now to do that. So I'm thinking government ops or full board. I'd really like to get them in as soon as possible. They're specific to counties and they give a really great presentation. And whoever decides to do that, we want to make sure that we don't just get Steve Curry. He's a wonderful director of MAC, but we want to get Dina and her team. They're the ones that go into the Capitol and into the committee meetings. If we could get that set up, that would be wonderful. And that's it. That's all I have. Thank you, Chair.
Thank you, Commissioner. We'll move on that as soon as possible, get that in. So good call. Anyone else under new business? Commissioner Song.
Thank you, Chair. I was contacted by a constituent this morning in regards to the Richmond Lennox drive-through. Yesterday, the police department were checking and running IDs with people who were going to get their vaccines. And the constituent and others have been concerned because this could deter individuals from getting the vaccine. So I'm just wondering if any other commissioners have been contacted by anyone, if there's been a complaint that's been made. I was told that the Michigan State Health Department has been notified in regards to this.
Okay, thank you. I haven't heard any calls in the office. I'll double check out there. Thank you, Commissioner Song. Anyone else in a new business? I don't see anybody. Let's check the civic clerk. I don't see anyone there. Very good. Well, we'll close that and we'll go to public participation. Anyone from the public wishes to speak on any item or any subject is welcome to do so for 5 minutes. Is there anyone on the line who wishes to be heard? You can press *6 and unmute your phone, and you'll have 5 minutes. Anyone on the phone? Yeah, just press *6 and you'll be able to unmute yourself. I don't hear anybody on the phone. Staff, is there anyone in the chat box?
Chair, we don't have anyone in the chat box either.
Okay. One last time, anyone on public participation that's on the phone or in the chat box, you get an opportunity to speak. Okay, hearing none, I'll close public participation. I need a motion to adjourn. Can I have a motion?
Motion to adjourn by Farrington.
Support by Sabatini.
Moved by Farrington, support by Commissioner Sabatini. Please vote.
Zinner, yes.
That motion passes unanimously.
Very good. Commissioners, you have a pleasant evening, and we'll talk to you all soon. Take care. Have a good evening.